you're under arrest. Like, I don't know what to do at this point.
Welcome to Video Game Book Club, the show where we pick, we play, and we discuss a video game each and every month. I'm your host, JP, and always with me, Ben Tizzle Toops.
JP, listen, where I'm at, it is a dreary day. Ooh. It's pouring rain. Oh. The sky is gray. It's cold. What better way to spend the day? Pour up a glass of your favorite Commodore Red, settle in. Let's talk about Disco Elysium, bro.
I'm so excited to talk about Disco Elysium. But before we get into it, I just want to thank everyone who's been following us on the Discord, of course, on YouTube. If you enjoy our content and what we do, please like, subscribe, leave a little comment, and join the club.
Yes.
Join the club on the Discord. We've been popping off lately. We're always sharing our stories of when we play these games like Disco Elysium. So just leaving it out there. But Ben, why don't you describe to the people what Disco Elysium even is?
Man, so Disco Elysium is, a super narratively driven game. It's sort of a point-and-click adventure. It's the way I was thinking about it to myself as I was playing it is Disco Elysium is the ultimate evolution of a choose-your-own-adventure novel, right? Where it's a book where you're going page to page and, you have a choice to make, and depending on the choice, you turn to a different page. This is like the next evolution of that. You're a detective in a rundown city with this insanely rich tapestry of lore. Mm-hmm. You're trying to solve a murder while at the same time trying to remember who you are because, oh, by the way, you have amnesia for some reason that is basically impossible to figure out. It's crazy. It's a crazy game. It's insanely well done. The art style is amazing. The voice acting is amazing. And yeah, just an all-around awesome experience.
I was thinking about the same thing, like how can I describe this game? And obviously it's like a tabletop like game, like a Dungeons and Dragons-esque type game mixed with your, like you said, point and click adventure. But because of the RPG style of it, where you have like all these skills that you're leveling, I was thinking like every conversation that you have is like a battle, like in any RPG that you're playing. And your stats that you're trying to defeat your enemy with are just stats that give you checks on conversation options that you can do against this character. It's not really a battle, it's more a conversation. And if you pass the check, if you defeat it, then you go to the next little beat of conversation and you kind of progress that like battle. And if you get it all the way, then obviously you get information about the case that you're trying to solve, which is what this game revolves around. You are a detective, as Ben said, and you're trying to go around and figure out what this murder that just had happened in this town is. And, you have crazy stories and crazy side quests as you go through this, like, absurd world. But the way the world works is, like, you're in this, like, isometric place, and you just kind of walk around. You can't really do anything other than walk, point to your maybe bubbles of thought. You see something, and then your character is like, oh, this reminds me of something. And so you click it, and you have a little short sentence. Or you have conversations with, the dozens and dozens of characters that inhabit this world.
Yeah, and in addition to the characters that inhabit the world, I think one of the more unique elements of the game is the characters that inhabit yourself, right? Mm-hmm. Like, your character is the summation of 20 different mental characters, basically. So at any given time, you have these characters in the form of like empathy or authority or these kind of psyche, aspects of yourself that will interject into the conversation and say, hey, you should say this. And it's up to you as, the player to decide like which of those aspects you want to really like lean into. Some of them come off like in different ways and their voice acting is very funny. But yeah, it's up to you as the player to decide. I think that's one of the things that makes this game really unique is you get to decide like every inner machination of your character, right? You can decide so much about yourself and how you play, and it's super, super unique in that way.
It's unique and it's hilarious. Like your mental conversations that you have are so funny. And as Ben said, as you're having these conversations and you're trying to like extract information from all these NPCs, you have your own mental gymnastics going on in the background where, yeah, your empathy or your suggestion or your authority or your shivers or electrochemistry, all of these different aspects of your mind are talking to each other. And sometimes they mess up. Like, my suggestion will tell me, bro, you should ask him about why he has a handkerchief in his pocket. I'm like, oh, yeah, definitely, I'll do that. And then the guy gets mad at me or something. And then suggestion's like, never mind, you shouldn't have done that. It's like, bro. So, it's hilarious. You really get, the writing. This game, obviously, like, it's trying to like talk a little bit about society, but it makes it in an absurd way. And I hope, all the viewers that have played this game, or if you're trying to figure out if you want to play this game, just go into it thinking that this world is absurd. Like, every party, political party, or like, little group or gang of people that are like have a say in this world, don't take it like super seriously. Everyone is comically like at the end of a spectrum. That spectrum, whether it is left or right or up and down, they're just always at the edge of them, and you're just trying to navigate these conversations, and it's just so absurd. And the absurdity compounds because how absurd your own mental conversations are, and it really is a treat to read, because it's a lot of reading to read all of these conversations happening.
Yeah, and it's like it occupies this really weird space where the game is like hyper realistic in ways, but it's also super absurd and like bordering on bizarre in different ways as you get kind of later in the game, like we'll talk about.
I was just gonna say, there's no like conversation where you say something and they like ignore what you say. You say something and if you say something stupid or weird, they're going to be like, what the hell did you just say? Like, that was so weird. And it will hit your morale or something. And it's like, oh, I shouldn't have said that. So yeah, like hyperrealism, I see what you mean. Like, it really comes through. Yeah.
But so do you want to talk about, so the opening of the game is you are this character. You don't even know your name. You don't know who you are. You just wake up in this trashed hotel room. So why don't you walk me through kind of that first like hour of gameplay for you?
Yeah, you wake up, and before you wake up, actually, the screen is black, and you hear the first narration of the game. Every single character, whether it's in your mind or outside of your mind, is voice acted, at least in the final cut version of this game, which we both played, I'm pretty sure. And you hear your reptilian brain, literally that's what it's called, talking to you and saying, like, you've done it this time, and it's telling you like you are nothing, you are in the void and nothingness, and you have this little weird conversation where you have no idea what's going on, and you wake up in this trash hotel room. You're wearing nothing except your underwear. Your room looks absolutely disgusting. Your couch/bed is all over the place. Your clothes are all over the place. There's a million alcohol bottles trashed everywhere. And you kind of start the game by figuring out what's going on in your room. You pick up your pants, you put your pants, you pick up your shirt, you equip your clothes, and your clothes actually have stats. So this is the game introducing that to you, where, hey, if you equip a shirt, you'll have +1 volition or +1 empathy or +1 whatever. So that's kind of like a really smart way of introducing how that works. But basically, you wake up in this like hotel, and you start meeting a little bit of the characters. You actually, one thing that you can do, your portrait, every character has a portrait in this game, and the portraits are actually really, really well done. Like the art in this game is incredible. But when you wake up, you don't know what you look like, because you don't know anything. You are an amnesiac. You literally forgot everything, literally everything. Something like absurd, like you don't know what a rectangle is because you haven't learned it. That's how bad your amnesia is. And so you don't know what you look like. And so you can go to the bathroom and look at yourself in the mirror. When you do, you see yourself and you look disgusting, obviously, because you're an alcoholic and you're on the worst hangover of your life. And you are always smiling. And you have this smile that is super, super weird. It's called the expression, is how the game calls it. And so you can look at yourself in the mirror. If you don't do that, if you don't look at yourself in the mirror, your character portrait will be blurry for like the rest of the game, unless you literally go and look at yourself in the mirror, which you should do at some point. But you get out of your hotel room, and then there's one person at the beginning. She's smoking a cigarette. Her name is Classier, and she's like, "Hey, good morning, officer." And you're like, "Officer, I'm a cop?" And she's like, "Yeah, you're a cop. You've been here for a few days." And he's like, "I have? What the heck?" And this is the first kind of like absurd conversation that you have where you realize, okay, my guy literally does not know anything. And then this is the first time that your inner psyche has been mentioned, starts talking to. But I want to kind of keep an aside, and I want to ask you, because we're going to recap the story and how it went for us. But what did you pick for your starting character? What did you allocate your points towards?
So there's a few different like presets, I guess you could call them,
Yeah.
with different kind of allocations of the stats. I don't remember what the one I picked was called, but it was the one that was more heavily in terms of like intellect.
Yeah, I knew you were gonna do that,
Like,
bro. You want to be smart boy.
Well, yeah, man. I got to try to be what I'm not in the real world.
Oh my sense. Okay, all right.
No,
Says the guy
okay.
with the PhD.
But no, I went into it, trying to be like, because I was like, I figure I know there's so many different ways to play the game, but when I was starting the game, I didn't know a lot about it, and I knew, listen, this is like a detective, crime solving, murder mystery. So yeah, like I gotta have some kind of brains about me to kind of put this thing together, right? What about you?
I did a custom set, so they give you like 12 points maybe that you can allocate between the 4 main categories of your stats, which is your physical, your motorics. I don't know how to say that. I have an accent, guys. Your psyche, which is like your emotional intelligence, and then your intellect, which is your actual raw brain power. And I went full physical, so strong, and emotional intelligence. So I allocated 1 point only on my raw brain power, and like 2 points, I think, on my like hand-eye coordination, your sensory kind of stats. So no, I was super physical, and so the physicality of my character makes it really fun, because most of the physical, quote unquote, is you love to do drugs, you love to drink, you have a shiver, so like you're in tune with like how your body feels. You have a lot of endurance, so you have a lot of health. So I had a ton of health. Because of my emotional intelligence, I actually had a lot of morale too. So I was always really healthy, which I don't know if that happened to you. But so what I wanted to say that, because when you start talking to people, immediately you're passively, as you pick discussion options or dialogue options, there's checks going on after every option that you pick, and the game will tell you if you passed or failed a kind of check that will then give you a conversation from your mind to yourself. And so at the beginning, obviously Classier is an attractive woman, and then all of my dialogue was, bro, you gotta ask her out. You gotta go out with this girl. You gotta like, hey, ask her if she wants to go back to your room, or like you should go to her room. And it started, I don't know. The game for me started so absurdly because of that I just thought it was so fun. But you go, you talk to her for a little bit, and then you go down, and there's the bartender / manager. You call him bartender. He's not. He's the manager of the hotel, and he gets mad at you. His name is Gart, and he's kind of an asshole. But he's that's warranted, because you have trashed his hotel room for the last 3 days, and he hates you. He's like, bro, you should leave, but you're a cop, so he kind of has to respect you a little bit. He has no real respect for you. He just has a tiny respect for you. So we talked to him for a little bit. He's like, bro, you trashed the hotel room. You owe me $100 or real. So please pay me $100 by the end of the day. And you're like, okay, that's my main task today, at least, or one of my tasks today. Talk to him for a little bit. And then you meet the absolute main character of this game, the best boy that has ever lived, Mr. Kim Katsuragi. This is your sidekick of the game. Mm-hmm. He is the voice of reason. He's the person who keeps you on track. He's the person who teaches you kind of how to be a detective again. If Kim didn't exist in this game, the game would be extremely difficult. And actually, Ben, I don't know if you know this, but there's ways where you can piss Kim off so much that he will leave, and then you won't have him anymore. And I'm sure the game becomes really, really difficult. But you meet Kim, and he's from a different precinct, and he's like, yo, Detective, nice to meet you. My name's Kim. You look terrible, but we have a murder to solve. So tell me, what have you been doing this whole time? Basically, because you've been there for a few days, supposedly like trying to uncover the murder. And you're like, nothing, dude. I haven't done anything. I don't even know who you are. I don't even know that there's been a murder. I don't know anything. And it's just
all anyone says, like, you can try to talk to some of these people, like the manager and like different people around the hotel, and as far as they are aware, all you've done is show up to the town a few days ago and just get violently drunk and like just harass people, like wave your gun around, like just be a menace to society, basically.
Literally.
And then after all that, you pass out, lose your memory, wake up, and here we are. And Kim's like, what have you been up to? And you're like, not much.
He definitely does not like you at the beginning of the game. Obviously, depending on how you play it, he will love you at the end. But he doesn't like you. He doesn't respect you. He's like, this is so stupid. Why am I here? He's from a different precinct, so he doesn't, excuse me, know you. Maybe he's heard of you, but he doesn't really know you. But he's like, all right, well, there's been a murder, so let's go and see where the victim is. And so you go, and the victim is actually behind the hotel in like this like kind of courtyard area behind the hotel. So you and Kim walk outside the hotel, and then you go and investigate the murder. So what do you see, Ben?
Yeah, so first of all, it's a really gruesome setup because the body has been there. The body has been, hung essentially. So it's hanging from a tree, and it's been there for multiple days. So it's like rotting. It's like, necrosis, like all of this really disgusting stuff. So you walk out to the courtyard. Like you said, your primary task, the first thing you're going to do is go out there and investigate the body. And so it's just this like super decayed body hanging from a tree, and there's kids like throwing rocks at it. And so like the first thing I did is obviously talk to the kids, and it's this like, insane youth. Like, I don't even know how to describe. His name is Kuno. And he refers to himself in the third person. He's like clearly on drugs of some kind, it seems. So there's a few opportunities to, and this is where kind of these checks that you were mentioning come into play. There's a few opportunities to like try to figure out what's going on with this kid, basically. And like depending on the different stats you have, I think this one specifically is an empathy check. So you can, the game basically tells you like there's dialogue options, and one of the options is like figure out what's going on with this kid, and the game tells you it's like it's a locked check, right? And so you have to roll a certain score on the dice, right? There's all these dice rolls, like you said, happening in the background, and you have to score a certain score to unlock that check and proceed down that dialogue path. So depending on how much empathy you have as a stat, you can allocate points different places as you go. Depending on the clothing you're wearing, you can get bonuses to these stats, and potentially figure out what's going on with these kids. I like totally whiffed at that. I did not figure it out. So Kuno was just like, get out of here, pig. Like, I don't respect you. And I was just like, okay, so I guess that's it.
Kuno has a Scouse accent from Liverpool.
Yeah,
and he is so hilarious. Every other word that he says is a profanity. He's cussing you out, and I actually punched him. I punched him to establish authority over Kuno.
Oh my god!
So that was one of my checks. Again, because we played the game differently, we have different checks. You can do different things, and just a super quick aside. You have your passive checks as you pick dialogue options, but you also have like your action checks, which is a white dialogue option. And it says, hey, if this is a white option, that means that you have to roll. And if you pass it, then this will happen. And if you don't pass it, something else would happen. A failure will happen, but you can try it again. Or there's an orange check or orange dialogue box. And this is like a one and done. You either pass this and something happens, or you don't and something bad happens most of the time. So with Kuno, the punching, I think you can only do it once. So I was like, let's roll, whatever, let's do it. I have pretty high physicality, so I'm like, yeah, let's punch this kid. He's 12 years old, and an adult, like 47-year-old man just absolutely knocked him out. And then he likes you, and then he's like, bro, you're not that bad. You're not that bad. But you and Kim, after Kim does not approve of this. He's like, don't talk to these kids. What are you doing?
Can you blame him? I mean,
no, not at all. Like, Kim is the voice of reason. But he's like, all right, once you're done playing, let's go actually investigate the body. But as Ben said, the body is so disgusting, really. It's so gross at this point that you have trouble even approaching it. It smells so bad. And you need a motorics check. It's probably some sort of like, I don't know, some yellow check that you need to pass. And I didn't pass it. And so I puked everywhere. But at this point, I had punched Kuno, so he didn't make me feel that bad about it. And so you can't get the body. You can't really inspect the body. And so this is your kind of like main task at this point of the game is, hey, you need to get the body down and you need to actually do your detective work and investigate what the heck happened to this guy.
I'm gonna be honest. So I failed the body check as well, like approaching the body basically, and I was just like, I don't really. It wasn't really a choice I made. Like, that happened, and I was like, all right, I guess I can't like get the body down right now, and I literally just like forgot about the body for like a day and a half, basically. Like, I just left it there.
Yeah, like, whatever. Body's.
I was like, all right, I guess I just can't. Like, I investigated it. You find like some footprints around the body with different sizes of boots, and like one of the footprints is really unique, and you take note of that. So that, I guess that's one kind of insight into how I was playing. So since I was super high intellect, I had a lot of points in the visual calculus, I guess, like aspect, I guess you could call it. So visual calculus is basically like you see a situation and it's like, a like Sherlock Holmes situation where like the world slows down and your brain is like charting out all the different paths of the comings and goings. So my character like sees all these different footprints and he like locks on and visual calculus kicks in, and it's like there are 8 different sets of footprints. One of them is size 43, one is size 42, one of them has a flat left heel, one is blah blah blah, like just kicking in like super detective. So I got all that information, but then I was literally just like, okay, well, I can't do anything with the body right now, so see ya.
I feel like I never saw any visual calculus because my raw brain power was so low that I never got any of that. I played it so
visual calculus is cracked.
No, yeah, like I went there, I like failed the check. My mental thing said something like, you see footprints, you don't know anything.
That is so funny.
Because of my high physicality and high emotional intelligence, what I had to do is talk to people and either force them to tell me things or like empathize with them and they would tell me things. So that worked really well for me. But now at this point, Ben, you have the whole world is open. So at this point, basically, your task. Hey, you're a detective. You need to figure out what happened to this body, but like you need to get the body down and kind of, there's these specific things that you need to do. Also, you need to figure out who you are. So 2 kind of stories that you need to piece together. But the game opens up. So you're in this city. It's kind of like the slums of a city, really. And you start walking around and you find a lot of people. And every person that you find gives you some insight on who you are a little bit, if they know you. Or you can ask them about the murder and they'll kind of give you some information. Obviously, no one knows what happens or they don't want to tell you. So, you can't really piece it together. You can't like speed run this game and finish it in like a day of in-game time. You kind of have to do a lot and have a lot of conversations to kind of get there. So what I wanted to just quickly to give the viewers like an example of like, or the listeners, I guess, I don't know, of the game. You find in the hotel there's a lady she's in a wheelchair, and so you like talk to her. Mm-hmm. Her name is Lena. She is the wife of a cryptozoologist. The science of finding mythical creatures, basically. Anyways, you talk to her, and it's just you try to figure things out. She calls you honey. She thinks you're sweet. She's like old and frail, and she knows that you're having a rough time. I asked her for money because I have no money. She gave me a pin. She's like, you can pawn this and make a few bucks. And I'm like, thank you so much. Or like outside, and that's one conversation that you had. So you didn't really learn anything about the case, but you learned what cryptozoologist is. You also learned that her husband is working across town in a fishing village, and he hasn't been back in a while. It's like, okay, I can figure that out for you. Then you go outside and there's these two old men and they're playing petanque, which is like a ball game where you throw a ball and you need to get it close to a different metallic ball. And they were in the war or whatever from like 50 years ago. There's so much lore in this world. And they are like fighting because they loved the same woman way back when, and one of them like left her and then the other guy married her and then she died, and then they like fight. They're like frenemies. They like always hang out. And then you learn a little bit about the world. That conversation was more about lore. And then you go and there's a bookshop over there, and then you talk to the person, and then that's kind of how the game flows. It just, every conversation that you have is its own little 20 to 45 minute piece of gameplay that like either teaches you a bunch about the world, the case, yourself, or you're just fucking with people. So it's so good.
I'll be honest, that first, like, I don't know, call it 3 or 4 hours of gameplay was so overwhelming to me because like you said, there's that first, like, everyone's going to have the moment where you leave the hotel and you go out to the body, right? That's just what you do. But after that, like you said, the whole world is open. And so, like, I'm sitting there and I'm like, I know nothing about this world. I know nothing about the case. Like, I just tried to investigate the body and like failed miserably at that, basically. Like, I have literally no idea what to do right now. So like I was trying to talk to people and learn about stuff, but I just felt like I was making zero progress. And then in the back of your head, there's also this, like, the guy tells you need to come up with like 130 real to pay for the cost of your room, basically, right? And you're like, okay, like maybe I can get that together. And then you go sell stuff and you're selling stuff for like 1 real. Yeah. And it's like, literally, how am I going to pay for this? Like, so I was like so overwhelmed by all the different, I don't know, things going on in the game, and like feeling like I had no idea where to go or what to do. So yeah, honestly, that first couple hours was like a little rough for me.
It's a lot. The game throws a lot at you. And I actually didn't tell you this, Benny, but I have a secret. I played this game before. I've played it before.
Oh, okay.
And when I load the game for the first time, I saw my last save file was from 2021. So a long time ago, 4 years now.
Dang.
And I that's exactly what happened to me. I got this game, it was on sale, and I was like, oh, this obviously, it has a huge cult following. People love this game. Let me try it. And it was super overwhelming. And not a lot of action. I mean, it's just a lot of reading and listening. A lot. Like it probably is like a 500-page novel or more,
Yeah.
And
like it's closer to a book than it is a game.
Exactly. Closer to a book than a game. And you just kind of like, you just have agency on like the first like maybe 3 days of the in-game time of like which order you do things, and then that's it. And then the story kind of takes its own path. So I only played about 6 hours of the game. So maybe I did like the first day, maybe the first day and a half, and then I kind of, maybe things didn't click. But because I had that experience a few years ago, and I went into the game this time with like not a strategy, but like, okay, I'm just going to play silly. I am like, again, I'm just going to say, yeah, I'll do all the drugs. When I find cigarettes, I'm going to smoke the cigarettes. When I find someone is on speed or whatever, like I'll ask them, hey, can I have a little bit of that? Hey, can I bump a little bit of this? Just to see how absurd my kind of like path in the game will be. And that just made it a little bit more fun. And I knew that like things won't piece together for a while. So I was like, let's just play 30 to 45 minutes at a time, talk to a few people, figure some things out, and then I'll go to the next thing. And one thing that really helps is that you have a journal. And in your journal, you can check all of the tasks that you have taken upon yourself. So either you have side quests, kind of like the cryptozoologist wife. She wants you to go find the husband and tell him to come back. or whatever. And so that's like a new task that you have. Hey, whenever you have time, see if you can go find the husband. And so checking the task and checking your journal kind of keeps you in track of, okay, I need to do this today, or, oh, I can do that. Oh, I put some points in empathy or volition so I can go and do this one thing. So just taking the game a little bit at a time works. But to what Ben's going to say is super true once you figure out what is going on in this city. So, of course, at the beginning, it's kind of fun, right? Bookstore, the people playing petanque, obviously, well, not that fun. There's a dead guy in the backyard. And then you kind of go to the side and you see that there's a huge strike going on. It's not really a huge strike is going on because there's a complicated, like, overarching story, basically, of what's going on in the city. But to put it simply, there's a union, and this union isn't like a typical union like you would find, like, again, this game is absurd, right? So the union isn't like a union like now in this world. It's in our world. It's a kind of like a mob, really, where they control the city because there's no law enforcement in the city. They control the city. They're like, for the people. That's like the party, right? Their motto, at least. It's like, for the people. We're here to protect our people, to like protect the city, to keep things in order. And they work in the harbor where they like do like goods and services passing, goods passing in like a big what are those containers?
Like
and,
shipping
containers. Thank you.
Yeah.
But they're in strike right now because the company that owns them, they're like the capitalist pigs who like own them, and they don't want to pay them anything, and that's like the other side of the coin of this struggle. And the union is like, hey, we want every single person that works in this company to have a say in company decisions, and the capitalist people, which is absurd, obviously, like you can't, that's not how things work. And then the capitalist people are like also absurd in their own way, like, no, like they don't want to give you anything, they don't want to concede, and so they're at a standstill, and so the workers aren't working. And then there's this other group of people, they're called the scabs, and I don't know if that's a real term or not, but yeah, it is. Okay, yeah, they taught me that term, and they are looking to work the people who are on strikes jobs for lower pay or whatever, so that they can make some money, and they kind of maybe go town to town looking for people not wanting to do their jobs and taking their jobs for a while or whatever. But they have a leader, and the leader is in cahoots with the capitalist people. So I'm like, this whole story is like a spaghetti kind of conflict and story, and that is super overwhelming too. The game forces you to kind of make a decision on whether you want to side with the union or the Whirling Pines? No, not Whirling.
Wild Pines.
Just Wild Pines. Or you can say, hey, I want to stay out of this and just focus on the case. So it's kind of like you either choose one, choose the other, or you say no. But why don't you tell me, Ben, a little bit about how you go about meeting these two sides of the conflict?
Yeah, so what happened to me, so like I said, after I saw the body and stuff like that, I was just like, I don't know what to do. So I went to the bookstore, and there's this like whole side quest in the bookstore where the owner thinks that the building it's located in is like cursed, and you can like pretend to be some like psychic person and tell her you'll investigate it, or at least that's what I did. I think there's multiple ways you can get in. You probably just punched her.
I did. No, I didn't punch her. But she was like, don't go in there. And I said, I will go in there. I just went in.
Of course. No, but so you go in. She's like, oh, there's like a malignant entity living in the chimney. And you go in, and you just find like, all this evidence of like past businesses that have failed. Eventually you can make your way into the chimney, and you just find like this really nice woman who's like a novelty dice maker, who's just like, yeah, I'm doing fine. Like my business hasn't failed. And so you're like, okay, whatever. So that's like one, side quest, I guess you could say, is like exploring that building. You also find like a revolutionary cache of weapons in the basement, which kind of comes into play later in the story. But so I went through that, and I just kind of kept exploring that area of the city, and that brought me to Joyce, Joyce Messier, who's one of the main characters in your game. She is like the representative of the corporation, Wild Pines, and her job basically is to negotiate with the union. So like you said, there's a big strike going on. Joyce is trying to, do that negotiation to get the workers back going. And so I talked to her and I was like, what's going on? She also has like a lot of information about the world. So she tells you a lot of kind of world building type stuff. But yeah, she basically tells you that the person who was killed, you ask her about the murder, obviously, and she tells you eventually you have to either convince her or do like a task for her basically, but she'll let you know eventually that the person who was killed was a person in like a private security firm that was hired by the corporation, and he was basically killed by like a mob from the union basically. So literally it's a direct conflict between the corporation and the union. And that's kind of the big story beat there, is that she kind of tells you about that. You can there's like other kind of things you can pick up from her conversation, but that's kind of the main thing at the moment. So that's kind of what I did there. And then after that, so what she essentially asks you to investigate in exchange for information is she tells you that there's like a drug trade happening within the union. So the shipping company is basically a front for like a drug trafficking organization basically. And she asks you to like go talk to the truck drivers and basically figure out what's going on. So you can do a bit of that and meet like some different characters there. But that's kind of really all there is at the moment. And I feel like that was kind of the end of the first day for me. Like I looked at the body, I investigated the whole doomed commercial area, as it's called. I talked to Joyce, I did the investigation, and then the first day was over for me. And it brought me to a really strange scenario, which kind of, I don't know, opened my eyes to certain parts of the game, where in all of this, I totally forgot about the money you owe to the hotel.
Yeah.
And on some level, I was kind of thinking to myself, like, I mean, like, my character will figure a way out of it, basically. Like, I'll, sleep somewhere else, or I'll just sleep in Kim's room, or I'll, convince the manager to give me a discounted rate or whatever. Like, I had no money at this point because all of the, you can ask people for money, like you said, but all of the ways to do that are presented in like very, I don't know, imbecilic ways. Like when you're talking to the cryptozoologist, for example, the option to ask her for money is like, she calls you honey, and the option to ask her for money is like, do honey get money? And like, so I see these options and I'm like, I'm not going to do that. But like, you pretty much have to on that first day. You have to get money from different people. And so I found myself at the end of the first day, and you literally cannot progress the game unless you get money. Like, I learned that there comes a point in the game where you have to pay for the room, and if you don't, you cannot progress further. Like, literally cannot. And they're also like, you get locked out of paying for the room at a certain point, so you can just soft lock the game for yourself at this point. And that was like a moment for me of like, I just found it really weird that in a game with so much freedom of choice and freedom of decision making, that there are these like soft lock points. And this isn't the only one. Like, there are multiple soft lock points in this game. But I found myself, like, I literally had to reload an earlier save and go talk to Joyce and convince her to give me like the full 130 real.
Wow.
Like, I had to save scum to do it. Like, I had to reload the game multiple times because I was like, I literally can't play the game. Like, I'm gonna have to create a new save if I don't do this. So I was like save scumming, and the option to get her to give you money is like a difficult one. It's like, depending on your stats, it's tough. But I literally didn't have a choice. I just had to save scum it until the point where she was like, yeah, sure, you can have 130 real. And I was like, okay, cool, I can play the game now. So yeah, it was kind of a weird like sequence for me at the end of that first day.
That is weird because for me, the way it worked for me, 100 real is like an absurd amount of money. It's so much. And it's because you can't do it. You can't actually get 100 real, I don't think, with regular means, either asking people, except Joyce probably, or like finding bottles and selling them. You have to figure out Ben's.
Sorry.
No, you're good. Ben's headphones went rogue. You have to. You can't like, you can sell bottles and stuff and you can't really make that much money. I probably had like 20 real or something, maybe less at the end of the first day. But for me, whenever I went to talk to Guard about it and I confronted him about like not having enough money, Kim saved me for me.
Yeah.
So,
and I know that's possible. I might have talked, what might have happened is I might have talked to Gart about it before I met Kim. And so I didn't have Kim backing me up. And I think I just like exhausted Gart's dialogue. So when I got Kim and went back to talk to him to try to figure that out, like there was no remaining dialogue options for Kim to interject about it. So that was the situation I found myself in.
For me, so Kim interjects at the end. This is like late at night, and he had confiscated some spinners on like motor carrier, like your car spinners for your rims, basically. So he's like, hey, we can pawn these. And so you go and you sell the spinners to Roy, who's the pawn shop owner, 200 real he gives you. Obviously, you split it with Kim. Kim takes 100, you take 100. And then you go back and I had convinced Gart to not make it 130, so he discounted it to 100. And I had like 112, 115 or something like that, so I gave him $100. But that sucks. I didn't realize. Yes, there's a lot of soft locks that can happen in this game, and I think that's just normal for games like this that are like narrative based, because there's so many options and checks. One of the videos that I was watching after I completed the game to like kind of learn more about it is that some of the stats, or like the people that live inside of your head, your characters, they have up to 800 different passive or action checks in the game. 800, and there's 20 of them. Or more than 20. Or 20, I don't know, which is so much. And so because of the nature of that and how kind of like convoluted everything is, and like the kind of like spaghetti story that this is driving, there's bound to be like endpoints here and there, but that sucks. That would happen on the first day. You've only played the game for a few hours, and it doesn't feel good when you can't advance, for something that is kind of out of your control. You didn't choose not to be able to pay him, obviously. For me, before I did a little bit more on the first day, probably because I didn't talk to Joyce that much, but I to get to the second side of the conflict, the Union side, you have to go through this huge, gigantic, like 2.1 meter person. His name is Measurehead. Measurehead, and he is huge. He has like a super weird political inclination. He's racist.
I mean, you can say weird, like he's just racist.
He's just racist. Yeah, he's super racist.
So his whole thing, the reason he's called Measurehead is because he believes in this like literal racial supremacy.
Yeah.
And there's this old belief that you can like measure different parts of people's skulls and like see basically what that tells you about their intellect. And so that's called phrenology. So he literally, like when you talk to him, he's like, your, cleft palate is indicative of your lower intellect. And like the space between your ears and your eyes is way too large. Like you are of lower standing. And so like you were saying, he's standing between you and like advancing the plot. So you basically have to like figure out a way past him.
Yeah, so he's another like a gate that you have to go past. And then what I had to do, or what I did, was I absolutely roundhouse kicked the crap out of him. And
I did the same thing.
Oh, you did? Okay, nice.
So since it was probably an easier check for you, since you have like the higher motorics and stuff like that, it was like a very low chance thing for me, because the other option is basically having to like, you can basically like absorb his racist ideology.
Yeah.
He gives you like racist thoughts and you can like internalize them, and then he'll let you pass. And I was like, I'm not doing that. And it was like, you know, a 17% or something check to like knock him out. And I just nailed it
Wow,
on the first try.
that's too
I was
good.
like, let's go.
There's so many of those moments where like I had like 93% I can pass this check, and then I would snake eyes it, and snake eyes is always losing. And so I would just lose it, and I would be so mad. But then, you know, conversely, I would have times where, I had like 20%. I was like, whatever, I need to try this. And then I would pass it, and it's like, yes, thank you. But you kick him, and then you go through like this kind of like route to get to the union boss, and you meet a character along the way. His name is Leo. He was pretty fun. He tells you a lot about everyone, so you can always go to him if you want to learn more about the union's characters. And you meet Mr. Evrart Clare is his name, and he is just like Joyce. Like both of these characters were written really well, I think, because they're both very personable, and they're both personable in different ways. So Mr. Clare is extremely, extremely amicable to you. He calls you by your name. At this point, you still don't know what your name is, but he knows your name. He knows your name is Harry Dubois. And he's like, Harry, I'm so glad you're able to come over here and talk to me, Harry. Harry, you're so nice. And like, he calls you by your name a lot. And that obviously is like a tactic to like get personable with someone. And he's totally playing you, though. Obviously, this man is really, really intelligent. He obviously is running a drug trafficking scheme. He's in this huge war against the Wild Pines, and he knows everything. Maybe he doesn't know everything about the murder, but he's happy that the murder happened because this escalates a war that he wants. And so, you know all of this, but you figure all of this out kind of. Not Harry, but you, the player, which is one thing that I wanted to talk to you about, because sometimes when I was playing this game, like JP, would figure something out. But obviously, Harry didn't, if that makes sense. Or my Harry didn't, because my Harry's dumb. And so I wouldn't have options of things that I would like to say, because I'm not maybe there yet in the game, or because I didn't say the right thing before, and so I didn't have that dialogue option. And it just, a little few things happen here and there where I was like, oh, this is super obvious, but I couldn't actually have a dialogue option to go that route. So not that this was frustrating or anything. It's just interesting. Like, this is part of the role playing, right? That you have to play as who your character is and how you kind of built him. But basically, he does one thing that is a good tactic besides just calling you Harry. He knows where your gun is. And so you have lost your gun and your badge. And that happens at the beginning of the game. You realize you don't have your things, as a detective should. And so he's like, I know where your gun is. And Harry, I swear that I will get you your gun if you do a couple of things for me. So basically, he kind of holds the gun over your head a little bit. Mr. Everett's going to get my gun. It's kind of like a joke of the game or whatever. Or he has my gun or whatever. And you just kind of have to do a few tasks for him. So the first task, I think, is you have to go and open a door. And again, he's so good at like talking to you. He's like, Harry, you're not doing anything illegal, Harry, I promise you. You are just, all you have to do is take this key, and there's a basement door, Harry, right behind the whirling rags, and all you have to do, Harry, is go and unlock the door. That's it, Harry, come on, this is nothing, Harry, please do this for me. I know where your gun is, And you're like,
the voice actor for this character, the voice acting for the whole game is incredible. But the voice acting for this character specifically is so funny, because it's so like sleazy, but like you said, so affable and personable. It's like, I don't know, it nails such like an awesome character.
It really does. And then Kim always has something to say about all the decisions that you make, right? You're the lead in this investigation, and that's why obviously Kim doesn't take over. He just kind of lets you have all these conversations, and then he interjects if he needs to, or after you'll talk to him and he'll tell you, hey man, you know he's playing you, right? Or like, hey, you agree to do something for the union boss. Now what are people going to think about the RCM, which is their law enforcement division? They're going to think that we are siding with the union. I don't know if that's like right. And then you ask Kim like, okay, well, who do you want to side with? And Kim always, because he doesn't want to sway you, and this is a really smart thing that the developers did, you need to make this game your own kind of path. You need to take this game by its horns and kind of like direct it as you see fit. If you have your side character like telling you what you should say and what you should do all the time, then like there's no point of calling this game like an RPG. So Kim is neutral on everything. He's a true neutral character, which is really, really great. He never picks a side. You ask him something and he's like, I prefer not to comment, or he says something like that. And they just did such a good job, because even though he's neutral, you just like him, and he's so intelligent that you want to like confide in him a lot. But basically you can do like a few things for him. But sorry, I got ahead of myself a little bit. That was kind of like the end of my first day. And then when you wake up on the second day, you go down to the whirling rags, and what do you find, Ben?
Yeah, so you like you said, whichever path you decide to go on the first day, you have like some more information about the murder that's taken place, whether it's from Joyce or the Union or a little of both. But you go down and you find a group of Union workers that are like kind of occupying a space within the whirling and rags. And you've kind of heard about them. They call themselves the Hardy Boys because the leader is Titus Hardy. And they are basically the law enforcement branch of the Union. They're just like a gang, basically. But because the Union runs everything in this town, they are like the de facto law enforcement. So, you have in your head that you want to go talk to them about this, and you go up to them, and there's like a legal counsel with them, who previously, if you met her on the first day, you thought she was just like a gardener.
Yeah.
But now she shows back up and she's like, actually, I'm a lawyer and I'm representing these men. And you're like, what? Like, that's kind of weird. And she's like, go ahead, like, go talk to them, whatever. She's like very confrontational with you though. And so you talk to them and you're just trying to gather like basic information about the case, right? And for me, like, since I had like the visual calculus of like all the footprints and the sizes of the shoes and the number of people and stuff, my visual calculus brain was like, this is the exact number of men that were at the crime scene. All of their foot sizes match, like it's them. But before you can do any of that, Titus is just like, yeah, we did it. Like we killed him. We took him out back and we hung him. Like, that's it. And you're like, okay, like, you're under arrest. Like, I don't know what to do at this point. But like, because what you've gathered at this point, world building wise, is that the police have like very little power here.
Yeah.
Like you are like a formality basically. And they're just like, yeah, we killed him. Like, but we killed him as a group. And you can't pin the blame on any one of us, so you can't arrest us. And you can try to arrest them. I think it probably ends poorly for you if you do, but like you can't really do anything at that point. So you're just like, okay, can I just like ask you more questions about it? And they're like, yeah, sure, whatever. And they basically tell you that they killed this guy because he like assaulted a local woman. Basically, he like assaulted her. And they killed him in retaliation. And they don't want to tell you who the person was. They don't want to tell you, like, who was involved. They're just like, yep, we killed him. That's it. And they're kind of hoping it just goes away at that point, right? And you can kind of tell there's something off about it. But you can't really do, like, anything more at this point, I think. Like, you can't really go any further with him. You have to like, further that exchange, you have to like assert your dominance over them somehow, which is very difficult. It's like a super hard check that probably starts at like 3% or something, and you have to like figure out different things about the investigation to increase it. But yeah, so for me, like, I couldn't really progress past that point, so I just kind of left it there.
Yeah, same. I actually had an ending in this one because I like you said, I wanted to establish the authority, and it escalated pretty bad. So much so that I asked Kim to give me his gun, and I failed a check on like what to do with the gun, and so my character Harry, he decides to, instead of point it at them, point it at himself, and at that point, I was kind of locked in this decision of what I am going to do. And basically, Harry pulls the trigger on his own.
Oh my
on his
God.
own head, and then the game ends, and there's a newspaper clipping saying like deranged cop, kills himself in front of like the union or whatever because he's crazy, and that's it, and the game ends. So obviously I saved, I like grabbed the autosave file from before, had the conversation over again, and decided I'm not going to escalate it right now. Let's figure it out later. But as Ben said, at this point, you just kind of have free roam on the second day to do a bunch of stuff. You can, if you haven't done anything in the abandoned building or the abandoned section of the commercial district building, you can go and check that out. You can do stuff with Kuno and figure out a little bit more of Kuno. You can talk to Cindy, the Skull member. You can talk to Mañana, who is part of like the union, but he's like a kind of a right-hand man kind of situation in the union, who's really cool. You can try to talk to the scab leader, who is also a mercenary, you find out. So, you again, like we were just saying earlier, on the first 2 days, you kind of have like this, everyone is going to go through all of these conversations in kind of like their own rhythm, in their own way, and the conversations are going to go one way or the other depending on what stats you have built up. You go to the third day, and then the map opens up a little bit more, and you're able to go to the fishing village. And the fishing village, you find out it has been broken. You can't go to the fishing village before because someone had a crazy car accident a few days before, and they broke the kind of like little bridge that is between the fishing village and the main city. And you, of course, realize that the person who did that was you on your drinking binge. But in the fishing village, you come to find out that is a really, really important place in this whole mystery. In the fishing village, you find a lot of information. And the more information you find, as Ben said, the more help you have in terms of like bonus points against the checks that you need to do with the Hardy Boys, with Titus, so that you can advance the plot. So that's why everyone kind of gets to this point. And in the fishing village, there's a lot of pretty cool side quests too, which we're not going to go over all of them because there's a ton, and then we'll actually spend 4 hours on this. But you meet some kids, they want to start a nightclub. You meet a programmer. She's trying to find like a, small, like a weird space. I don't even know. It was like the Pale or whatever.
Yeah, that quest introduces such like a bizarre element to the game, because you find this church, and within the church there's basically a point at which like no physical sensations emanate. And there's like this programmer and these ravers. The programmer's trying to figure it out. The ravers are trying to open a nightclub, and you have to like collaborate with them both somehow. And you find out eventually that this is a point of emanation for what's called the Pale. And the Pale is like this gray matter that like connects different parts of this world, like almost an ocean, but if the ocean was like antimatter, is like essentially how I interpret it.
Yeah.
And like no information can pass through the Pale, right? Like it takes all this special equipment. It like basically poisons people that go into it and like destroys their minds. It's super weird, but yeah, that's a really bizarre side quest, but one that was really cool and that I really enjoyed.
Yeah.
But yeah, so basically what it boils down to is that you have to figure out a way to get past these dialogue checks with Titus. So what happened for me was when I was talking to Everard, I got him to get Measurehead to get the body down. Mm-hmm, and then I was able to do the autopsy on the body. And while I was doing the autopsy, my character was like, something is off about this. And there was like a check. And I think I failed the check. But doing that gave me the option. Kim was like, well, if you want to keep looking at it, we can bring it to this freezer we found earlier. So we brought the body to the freezer, and while it was in the freezer, my character discovered a bullet hole in the top of the victim's mouth. And you can like reach up into the bullet hole and like pick the bullet out of the victim's brain, and you find it's like this old military cartridge. So you get all this information about that. And that was enough for me to go back to Titus and be like, hey, we know you didn't kill him. We know he was shot like before the hanging happened. So you need to tell us what's really going on here. And at that point, he was like, okay, you can talk to the victim. Her name is Klasia, who we met in like the very first moments of the game. She's upstairs. Go talk to her. So that was kind of how I got past that check. How did that go about?
I think this check is some sort of intellect check, because I was so low on it that I had to do a lot more. You know, I had to do more quests for everyone. And you might have done them too with Lillian and the washerwoman. I had to go and ask for their signatures so that Everard can build a youth center in the fishing village, and also like that will kick everyone out. He was trying to gentrify the fishing village basically. So you kind of assist with that, which isn't great, but you know, it is what it is. I had to pass this check, and that's what I did. So because it took me a little bit longer, I was talking to Ben of how many days it took him to kind of get through this investigation, and I think it took me one day more. I had to do a few more things, and also like the side quest was so interesting that I kind of wanted to do them all. But yeah, after I kind of got to where you are, maybe like half a day later or something, I was able to talk to Titus, and Titus pointed me to Klasia, and then you go and talk to her. So how does that come?
So did you not know about the bullet wound?
I did. Happened? Sorry. Yes. No. I also got Measurehead to bring the body down. I passed the checks. I saw the bullet hole, so I knew that yes, okay. he was. You know, and you have to convince Kim that, you know, because he's like, well, maybe they shot him after, and it's like, no, I think they shot him first, and then the hanging happened, and he's like, oh, okay, interesting. And then so kind of I think we did the same things, just different order, but we kind of both got to the same spot.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, at that point, basically you have to go talk to Klasia, who you know have figured out at this point is kind of the primary victim, I guess you could say, in all this. Titus is telling you Klasia got assaulted. She came to us. We took care of it. But after you kind of call him out on his BS, he's like, just go talk to her. So you do that, and you go talk to her, and you're like, so you were, you know, assaulted by this guy? And she's like, no. And you're like, what is going on here? Like, what do you mean no? Like, what is happening? And this is, like you said, all of the spaghetti strands are just like weaving their way through each other to construct this insane narrative. But so you get in this like back and forth between Klasia and Titus, where you talk to her and she's like, I didn't get assaulted. Like, go talk to Titus again. You go talk to Titus and he's like, yeah, she did. Like, here's a tape of the assaulter like telling us about it. You go and find a tape player, and it's like this tape of him, you know, saying all this crazy stuff. And she's like, do you go back to talk to Klasia? And she's like, oh, that's just his sense of humor. Like, he didn't actually mean that. And you're like, bro, what is happening here? Like, actually, what's happening? But eventually, you know, you find she kind of tells you that he was shot while they were like in an act together. They were like partying together, you can say, and he got shot like out of nowhere. Yeah. So obviously, like, the first kind of thing to consider is that there's like a window right outside of her bedroom, so maybe the person on the balcony is the one that shot him. And so this was another like visual calculus moment for me, where my brain was like, okay, it's a 78% chance that the shot originated from the balcony. However, there's also a 20% chance that it came from somewhere else in the city from a sniper. And you're like, a sniper? What? But it's like there's like 3 possible locations where it could have possibly been sniper fire, but it was probably on the balcony. And you're like, okay. And she starts to tell you about this other member of the Hardy Boys, who's actually a Hardy girl, named Ruby, that seems to have like a weird relationship with Klasia, like semi-romantic, it sounds like. Yes. So you kind of start piecing together in your head, like, okay, it sounds like maybe Ruby was jealous of Klasia and this like mercenary guy, so maybe she snuck up onto the roof while they were in the middle of this and killed him. And that's like, you know, your best theory at this point. But Titus won't tell you where Ruby is, so you have to go back to him and like present this theory with enough evidence, basically, and he'll eventually tell you, okay, fine, like, Ruby is hiding on hiding like kind of past the fishing village. We tried to look for her, but we haven't been able to find her. Like, good luck. So that was kind of, how all that went about for me. Picking up from that point, where did you kind of go from there?
Yeah, so I didn't, just the one different thing between me and you is that my visual calculus wasn't good, so I didn't actually figure out anything about, like, I think I tried the check, and the check, didn't pass, and so nothing happened. But then from that point, yeah, just goes to the fishing village, and we forgot to mention you get your gun at some point, and I don't know if you had your gun at this point. Okay, so there's another.
I don't think I did. Yeah.
Oh, you didn't. Okay, so I was able to get my gun either at this point or shortly before, shortly after. I can't remember, but I did have it whenever I went to confront Ruby. But you have to go to this like boardwalk, kind of, and there's a mural, and you have to pass a shivers check to figure out that there's something strange going on in this mural, and you think that someone might be living inside of it, or someone might be hiding inside.
And this is another like soft lock moment, because you literally have to pass, there's two shivers checks that you have to pass, one after the other.
Yeah.
And if you don't pass them, you cannot progress the story. Like, literally you can't. But so it starts as like a very low check, but by doing different side quests, like by investigating the doomed commercial area, by investigating the church and the like kind of weird point of origin in the church, by investigating the cryptozoologist, you can find her husband on the peninsula and help him like setting traps for this mythical creature they're trying to trap down. By doing all these things, you can increase those checks. And so the game is basically encouraging you to go like explore and do things before you get to this point.
And on the third day when the fishing village opens, I did all of those already. So when I got to the shivers check, because of the physicality, like I had like 9 base shivers already. Yeah. And you have to pass with like a 16 or something. So plus all the bonus points that I had for all the quests, I literally had like a 90% chance of passing both. And so for me, it was really easy. And then you have 2 options on how to infiltrate this like place where you think Ruby's hiding. You either go above like a staircase, or you go through like a sewer maybe system or whatever. I chose to go for the fun one, to go up the stairs, and it's like a whole cinematic thing that you go through, which is, they actually don't show you anything, but like, hey guys, trust me, it was really cool, according to Harry Dubois.
Well, there's like a very funny dialogue moment where the choice to go up like the ladder and the stairs is just like teleport to the top of the roof. And if you succeed on it, the screen just goes black, and then you come back on the roof, and you're like, I did it! I teleported! And your character's freaking out, and then Kim's on the ground, and he's like, no, you didn't. You just climbed up.
You climbed up.
It's a very funny moment.
It is.
But yeah, you eventually, somehow you get in the building.
You get in the building. You let Kim in the building, because he's like, nah, bro, I'm too old to do that. So just let me in whenever you get in. And then you like, okay, someone has been hiding here. You start finding pieces of, like a bed or something like that, and that pieces of someone living there. And you keep walking, and then suddenly you're hit with a like kind of like supersonic radio wave. You and Kim are immediately incapacitated by this like radio wave, and you're like holding your head, and you're like, oh my god, like this, noise is like way too much. And you find Ruby. So Ruby kind of, for some scientific reason that again my character doesn't figure out, and I kind of skipped a lot of the dialogue, because sometimes there was just too much dialogue, and I'm like, yeah, go. She's able to like use the radio to kind of like mess you up, and then you have a conversation with Ruby. And how did that go, Ben?
Yeah, so it was a weird conversation, because you're coming into it thinking she's the murderer, basically. Yeah. She's the murderer of the mercenary. So you go into it, and it's this crazy dialogue where, like you said, you're basically taking like physical and psychic damage the entire time. So like as you go, because your character is like, these radio waves are like cooking your brain basically. So the whole time you're like healing and trying to stay alive, and you can definitely die here.
Yeah, definitely.
But it's a really weird conversation. Ruby's just like, I had nothing to do with this. Like, I'm, kind of on the run from some different people. I knew you were coming for me, so I kind of set up this trap. Like, I didn't kill this guy. Clausia is not telling you the full story. She's basically an agent for this, like, international, I don't even know what to call it, syndicate. She's like
Yeah.
this crazy agent. She's not giving you the full story. I'm innocent in all this. And then she threatens to unalive herself. She, like, has a plan. She's just going to, do herself in at this point. And you have to either, like, there's a few ways it can end, right? It either happens, or you can, like, succeed on a few checks and prevent her from doing it, but then she'll escape. So I prevented her from doing it, and then she escaped. And, from that point, you just kind of investigate her, like, little encampment. You find, like, some information, but none of it is super important, I would say.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's kind of where that ended for me.
I failed the check. So for me, because I had so much physical stats, I was able to destroy the machine. So I went up and destroyed.
Yeah.
I passed it pretty easily, and I destroyed the machine. Was able to talk to her, and I couldn't save her. I couldn't convince her not to do it. So she ended up pulling the trigger, and then again, you investigate the thing. You talk to Kim. Kim and you are like, "What the heck? We should have arrested Clausier." It's definitely everything is pointing to her. She was with him when he died. I mean, it's just kind of like obvious. Well, how could we not see this? And you're having this conversation as you're walking back to the city from the fishing village. And then you find that there's a huge altercation going on in the city. And the tribunal that everyone's been talking about is happening in front of your eyes right now, where the union, and you think, oh, tribunal, you think, oh, it's going to be like some courtroom situation. No, it's literally a full-on, like, actual war kind of going on, like a battle between the Union and Wild Pines. There's 3 mercenaries. One of the scab leaders is a mercenary, and he's there with DePaul, which is another mercenary, and then one with a mask on that you haven't met before. And them 3, they are super kitted out with guns and armor, and they're like ready to destroy the Union. There's the 8 Hardy Boys and the lawyer confronting them. And yeah, I mean, you're a detective, so intuitively the thing that you have to do is that you have to step between them and try to de-escalate this this situation. And I'll just say like what happened in mine, and then you can, because a lot of different things can happen in this one depending on what you've done or what you decide to do in the moment. We haven't talked about this because, there's a million things in this game and it's hard to talk about everything, but you have your tie, your necktie, your horrific necktie, talks to you, your original tie. I don't know if you equipped it. And at some point in one of the side quests, you get like this alcohol spirit, and the tie before the altercation happens tells you, hey man, you need to dip me in the spirit so that you can make something. And you're like, because my guy's dumb, I'm like, okay, let me do it. And then you do, and then you realize that you're making a Molotov cocktail with the tie, because the tie is oily from like, your debauchery and like maybe your oil hair or whatever. And so I made a bomb. And so I had 3 options basically. I had, find an intellectual way to like de-escalate, find a suggestive way, which is emotional intelligence, to de-escalate it, or go freaking crazy. Or those were the 3 options that I had. Or go freaking crazy and throw my Molotov cocktail at them. And Ben, I had like a 50% chance of this succeeding, whereas the emotional intelligence one, because I had high stats on that, I had like 80% chance. And the way that I was playing my character, I was like, no, I have to go with like the absurd, way. And so I picked the Molotov cocktail and I missed. So I failed the check. I throw the Molotov cocktail. It doesn't hit anyone, and they immediately open fire on everyone. Kim kind of jumped in, and he's trying to like not save me. I mean, kind of, I guess, but just kind of protect me. He shoots someone, that person goes down. Then someone else shoots someone, that person goes down, and people keep falling in my scenario. So many deaths that I couldn't save. Yeah. And then at some point, Kim turns his back because you get shot. Harry Dubois gets shot. He kind of turns to you and tries to see, hey, are you okay? And then this is a check that you have to either pass or fail. And thankfully I passed it, where I was able to yell at Kim, hey, someone's pointing at you. And then he turns around and he's able to like deflect or maybe dodge out of the way or something. But because you get shot, for me, the screen goes dark and then you wake up a few days later. But how did this go for you?
So sort of similar. So there's no way, it's important to note there's no way to avoid like the actual conflict here, because the union is like, you know, set for conflict. The mercenaries are like, we heard you admit to the murder, you admitted to hanging him, like, and they cannot be convinced. Yeah. So like I exhausted all of the kind of intellect dialogue options trying to be like, it wasn't her, you know, we found this lady and we think he was shot, but we don't know from where. But you have not solved the case at this point. So like you can try to present a theory, but you're just guessing. And they're like, nope, don't believe you, like this is happening. So it gets to that flashpoint, like no matter what. But yeah, so in the moment, you know, you have ultimately the option. It seems like things are about to kick off. And so it was like a pretty low percent. I think it was probably sub 50%. I can't remember exactly what, but basically to like shoot the head mercenary. So my Harry, I made the check. He whips out the gun, shoots the head mercenary, and everything goes off from there. They start, you know, the guy in the mask who's like a really creepy character. Like he's in a mask. He has this machine gun basically. He like aims at me. I like succeeded on a dodge out of the way. I like dodged the bullet. And then, you know, I think I eventually got shot by someone. So like, yeah, I'm on the ground. Kim hits like a once in a lifetime shot basically in like a pretty epic moment where he shoots the armored guy like through the eye slit of his mask. Yeah. So Kim is like a total badass in that moment. But yeah, after that, everything. So I think probably more people in the Hardy Boys lived for me because I killed the initial guy and he didn't take any of them out. So not as many people died, but then the rest of it is the same. Like I was on the ground, Kim comes up to me, I get him out of the way. So both of us saved Kim, which is good.
Yes,
I think anything else is like unacceptable to me.
No. Kim has to
Kim is the best.
He is the best.
But yeah, so after all this, you wake up again in your hotel room. You've been shot. You're like kind of recovering, and Kim's there, and you're basically just commiserating with each other. You're like, where do we even go from here?
And how
like,
did we go wrong? I mean,
people are dead.
Kim feels
like,
so
where
bad.
Did we go wrong?
Yeah. Hey,
so
I have a question, Ben.
Yeah.
Were you wearing armor?
I was not.
How does that go for you? Because I had the hanged mercenary's armor. I was wearing it under my. It gave me really good physical stats, which I wanted, so that's why I was wearing. So they kind of like talk about that in my situation. He shoots me, but because I'm wearing the armor, it's more like I got knocked out than like something actually like hurting.
No,
me.
I just got shot.
Oh, wow,
I just like got shot. Yeah. No, I just took a bullet somewhere in like my leg, I think they say.
Okay.
But yeah, you wake up and the game tells you like don't run. So you can like either run or walk when you kind of point and click places, and the game tells you don't run because you've been shot. But I don't think that actually matters.
No,
like,
but I got the same one. I got the same don't run.
Okay.
Yeah. But basically, yeah, you and Harry, you're like, how could we have missed what did we miss? Like, you know, all of this is not great, obviously, and so you are like, okay, let's go talk to Classier. You know, Classier, maybe she's still around, and we can talk to Ruby. Obviously, the next thing is to talk to Classier. You go to her room, you realize she's not there anymore, but she has left you a note, and the note says something like, I left you a gift upstairs. So you go up to kind of like where her bedroom is, and she leaves you a kind of like string that shows the trajectory of the bullet. And because Ben figured out the visual calculus before I did, he knew, okay, one of those trajectories was like the 20% chance one that it came from far away. The visual calculus tells you, well, obviously now we have to go check, and we know that this is where that came from. So depending on how the visual calculus you did it before or after, like it kind of goes in a couple ways, but everything points to, okay, you need to go figure out that little island by the fishing village. So you go to the fishing village, you find, Lillian lets you borrow her boat. You and Kim go to the island where you think the shot came from, and you start investigating the island. There's no side quest here at this point. You're in the end game. You're about to finish the story and kind of put everything together. But there's a couple things I need to do. You're walking around. You have to like do this, do that, and then you find a kind of post position where there's like a bed, there's like a sling where you definitely put a gun in. There's like cigarettes that match other cigarettes that you found like close to the murder or whatever, and everything kind of starts adding up. Definitely the person that is in this island killed the mercenary.
And you can look like essentially through one of the slits in the tower, and it's like a perfect view of Clausia's room.
Exactly.
So it's like, yeah, everything's lining up here.
And then you find him. So Ben, why don't you give us the end of the game? What happens?
A lot happens. Like, it's hard to describe. But so yeah, you go out kind of in the back and you find this old man sitting near a fire. He's kind of been waiting for you, basically. He's kind of barricaded himself on this island, but he knows you're coming. And he is basically like, he makes allusions to killing people, but he doesn't really confess to doing it unless you've found like his little sniper's nest, in which case he does. Yeah. But yeah, he just kind of gives you like backstory about, he was basically a deserter in the revolution. So he like deserted his unit. And basically since then, he's just been like skulking through the cities in like the back alleys and the basements and like these hidden passageways. He's been like living in the city without people knowing. He's been kind of holed up on this island. He tells you that, in the past, one thing he pieces together for you is that the previous Union leaders, the Union leaders before Everard and Edgar Clare, was like disappeared under mysterious circumstances, and he lets you know that Edgar Clare found him and convinced him to kill the previous leader of the Union. So that kind of pieces that together. And yeah, he basically admits to the murder. He was like, yeah, I was here. I shot the guy. I've basically been like stalking Clausia through my rifle scope. And when I saw her with the mercenary, he doesn't really say it outright, but he was basically jealous. And he's like, parasocial kind of relationship. So he kind of admits to it. And he's like, yep, it was me. Like, you find his rifle. And then he kind of weirdly, like, something shifts. And there's like a moment of something shifting. And he like kind of goes not limp, but just like blank. Yeah. And he doesn't say anything. And then something really crazy happens.
So at this point, I had like 3 levels that I was saving, or I don't even know if I was saving them, but because I knew I was at the end, I was like, okay, let me just save my level just in case I need to pass some sort of check. And of course, I had to pass a motorics check to see this crazy thing. And in the cryptozoologist side quest, you're trying to find this phasmid. This phasmid like insect, and it's this like kind of mythical creature that they're trying to find, and Kim always laughs at them and everything, and you help them or whatever, so you know that it exists or maybe potentially exists. You pass a sensory test and you see something behind him, behind the deserter, and you see this gigantic like basically stick insect. But like it's huge. It's like maybe 4 meters tall or something. And you can sense him and you can talk to him and you tell Kim, are you seeing what I'm seeing? You ask the deserter too. The deserter's like, what are you talking about? Because, he's kind of going a little crazy and not talking well, like Ben is saying. You have this full-on conversation in your mind or somehow telepathically with this creature, and the creature tells you so much about like the world and like how things work and everything, and that's like super crazy. But basically you come to find out that the creature has like some sort of like venom, and he can like put this venom on you, and it will make you like forget, so that whenever you think about this insect in the future, slowly you start forgetting him, and then that's why they become like mythical, and that's why you always forget them. You kind of go through, this and that, and basically find out that the insect was kind of putting like his toxins on the deserter, and that's maybe one of the reasons why the deserter was like super crazy and was doing crazy stuff, because he alludes to the deserter that he has actually killed a bunch of people throughout his like 25 year stint in this like island. But it concludes with this really cool moment where you tell Kim to take a picture of the insect, and he takes a picture of the insect, and you are kind of like extending your arm to kind of pet the insect. And it's, everything art-wise in this game is so good, but there's a beautiful kind of like print of you extending your arm to the insect. And then, Ben, I look to my second monitor where I always have my like recording device software on, and I realized I was not recording the game, and I missed
that's kind of accurate.
It's so funny.
That's like, lore accurate.
Yeah. I missed that whole part. Like, I didn't record any of that, which I was kind of upset about. For like future videos.
It's lore accurate.
Yeah,
it's lore accurate.
But yeah, that's kind of like how that goes. It's really surreal. Obviously, it like goes with the theme of how absurd the game is, that like this phasmid is behind all of it, like not really, but kind of. And that's why the deserter was influenced, I guess. But because the deserter is kind of going, he's definitely, something's going on, you're like, okay, we can leave him here, we can go back to the mainland and like kind of conclude this investigation and get the people to come and fetch him, basically, the station. So you drive your boat back to the fishing village, and you find 3 people. And who are these people that are waiting for you, Ben?
So throughout the game, there's been like, I think from maybe the second day onward, or
third,
maybe the third. There's these people at the bottom floor of the Whirling in Rags. They're just kind of hanging out, and this was one of those moments for me where it was like very obvious what was going on, but I didn't like have the capacity. Like, there's points where you can radio into the different precincts and like talk to some of the people that literally know you. So it was obvious to me that these are like people from my precinct that know me, and they were like, one of them was pretty clearly my partner. But there's just no way to like put that together up until this point. So you come back, and it's your partner and like a patrol officer from the precinct, as well as like a psychiatrist, basically. Yeah. And they're like, Harry, we're like really concerned about you. Like, we've been observing you over these past few days. Like, we thought you were just being a ridiculous person, because you are one with the amnesia. But at this point, we're like, convinced and like very concerned. And this is kind of like I would say that all of the kind of the ways you've played the game, this is where you reckon for all of that. Yeah. Because like there's many ways for this to go. Like, if you've done your job as a detective and solved the case, and you like weren't a menace to society too much and stuff, that can be like, okay, well, we'll kind of welcome you back to the force. But if like you've just been like a degenerate, like if you've been drinking the whole time and using drugs and stuff and like making bad decisions, they're like, you're hopeless, you're gone. And the game ends on like a really depressing note where they just leave you there. But, thankfully, because I played like a good boy, I got the good ending where you go back to the station with them. Since I had like a good relationship with Kim, there's an option where you can like convince him to join your precinct, which I thought was fun. And yeah, that's kind of how it went for me. So I got, I guess, what you could call like the good ending.
I was a bad boy, and I was, taking all the drugs that I could. I was asking people for money, for alcohol, for cigarettes, for speed, for everything, and I was taking it. But I had a really good relationship with Kim, and I was doing my job. I was solving the case and doing everything like as I should be doing. So even though I was a bad boy, Kim vouches for me, and he's like, yes, he is a degenerate, but he is the best detective that I've ever seen, or whatever is kind of how he phrased it. The cool thing about this like end conversation, as Ben says, is that Kim gives like gives a recap of the way that you played the game, which I thought was interesting. So, as he's describing who you are, and then ends with like, hey, he's a really good detective. He says like, for me, he was like, he thinks he's a superstar. He's always talking about communism, and but also he said a lot of ultra liberal stuff. So I think he's confused on what communism is and what ultra liberalism is, which I thought was hilarious. He's like super sloppy. I shaved in the game, and like maybe he mentioned something like that. Like, you look terrible.
Yeah.
But then he ends it with, but he's a really, really good detective, and we couldn't have done it without him, or something like that. I also invited him to the precinct. And then you leave with your guys, and then you go back home, and the game ends. And that is Disco Elysium. But Ben, something that we should talk about before we finish, the Disco Elysium story is there's something that happened outside of the game that is pretty interesting, and I think people that play this game should know about. So why don't you tell us the controversy that is surrounding Disco Elysium?
Man, it is so crazy, right? Because this is a game, the heart of this game is about class warfare, essentially. It's about these like ultra capitalists, and there's the union, and there's bad people within the ultra capitalists and good people, and there's bad people in the union and good people in the union. Like the whole game is about this like moral gray area and the individualism within both of these kind of extremes. And so it's this like, very nuanced tale about all of this type of stuff, right? Man, does art imitate reality? Because what happened with the studio? So the publishers of this game, I think it's Zaum or something like that, Zaum. I don't know if that's an acronym or a word. I don't know. But so it's basically this group of friends that like grew up together. They were all creatives. They came together to try to like put this story together, and eventually decided on making a video game about it. And like they've done all this world building. There's a book about it. There's a book called Sacred and Terrible Air that's like within this world of Elysium. So it's this like creative collective, trying to put together stuff. But they needed money, right? So some rich guy, I think they're in Eastern Europe, so some Eastern European rich guy gives them a bunch of money to make the game. Everything's going great, but then the rich guy gets into financial trouble and has to sell his stake in the company to a different rich guy. And the different rich guy is basically a con artist. He's like this like, financial crime, like, bad guy, like white collar crime guy, basically, bad guy. But obviously they don't know that at the time, so they sell the company to this guy. And this guy basically takes all the money from the company and just like, takes the IP. So he owns the company, takes the IP of Disco Elysium, takes all the money from the company, fires the original like creatives of the studio, and is just like, all right, that's it. Like, see ya. You're done now. So basically stole the game from its original publishers illegally, obviously.
Yeah.
And like I said, there's this whole like world building, like there's this insane world, like all these crazy aspects of the world, the Pale, like there's so much to explore here. They had planned for a sequel, Disco Elysium 2, which would have been great. Like, I don't even know where you go with it. There's so many different ways.
Yeah.
But there's like obviously so much here, and it's just it's gone.
It's
like
gone.
It's never gonna happen. Disco Elysium 2 is never gonna happen. And it's like I thought about pirating the game because I was like, I don't want to give money to this publisher anymore. Like they stole the game from these people. Like I don't want to do that. But man, it's like I said, art imitates reality sometimes, and craziness.
It is craziness. And the original creators of the game, they still are in this like big legal battle against Zaum, even though they made Zaum before. So it's just kind of like a mind bending thing where like you're fighting against the thing that you created because they was stolen from you. And I just can't even comprehend how difficult that must be mentally and of course physically too. Like they've been going on this legal fight for for so long. And if you go on the subreddit and of Disco Elysium, again, this game like shook so many people, and it has a massive following. Everyone encourages you to pirate the game. So it just, it's crazy. And I think the creators are pretty active on like social media, and so sometimes they kind of give a little update here and there on how things are going, but in reality it's not going great, so it's kind of like the little guy versus the big guy situation, and it's just, unfortunately, in our world sometimes the little guy never wins, and it's really devastating. And yeah, it's a game that everyone would love to have a sequel, a game that everyone would like to expand the story on, whether that is with Harry and Kim or with someone else. I mean, there's so much lore richness here that it could have been a beautiful franchise, like, bunch of Disco Elysium games, and it just seems like this is the only kind of golden goose egg that we're gonna have, and that's what
it's like if the rich guys just let the creatives keep making the game, they would have made tons of money anyway.
Exactly.
Like, why you don't need to steal? It's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. But sorry to end the first part on a sad note, but we just wanted to say that at the end of the conversation with for this.
You have to know. You can't really talk about the game without addressing that. So yeah.
But we're gonna take a quick break. If you enjoyed the recap of the story, make sure you let us know, and if you had some different and funny conversations along the way, or maybe if you didn't punch Kuno but something else happened, let us know in the comments. Sure. And we will be back with part 2, where we're going to answer your questions that you've sent to us on the Discord right after this. Welcome to part 2 of the show, where we answer questions that you sent to us on our Discord. Make sure that you join the club. Go to the link in our bio to find our Discord so you can be in the know of Video Game Book Club. Yes. Ben, since you picked this game, why don't you give us the first listener question?
I will. All right. So our first listener question comes from Joe in the VGBC Discord. Joe asks, Disco Elysium presents a vast array of opportunities to develop the main character into any number of different people. Still, most people play in a way diametrically opposed to their own personality or in total compliance with it. Either we like to be our total opposite of ourselves or an enhanced version. Did you find this true for how you played out in the story, and what would you pursue differently in a second playthrough?
That's a great. Well, you asked me, Ben. So yeah, that's a great question, Joe. As always, you always bring bangers, but. I completely agree. Like I think that I didn't even think about this until he asked this. Of course, I played like a crazy person, and I like to think that I'm not a crazy person in real life. I can be a little bit crazy, but not that crazy, But things happen, right? As you're playing the game, you actually you empathize with what's going on, or you like certain characters more than others. And if you are playing like a crazy person, you find Lilian, for example, who lost her husband and has twin kids and a daughter, and she's like a fisherwoman, and it's just kind of has a rough time, and you don't want to be rude to her. It's kind of hard to be that way. Like, really, it hurts you, and so you try to be like polite, which my character wasn't polite, but I would be polite to some characters because I just kind of felt bad for them. So I would either play opposite of myself or play kind of like myself. So yeah, I just completely agree. I feel like it's hard to, when you think of something, when you think you have all these options and they're all, every spectrum of, crazy, not crazy, kind of balance in the middle. The first reaction is to be polite and to be nice. Most people are nice. But then, like Joe said, you're like, oh, but I don't want to do that. Let's do something that I wouldn't pick. And so, but then if you are playing that way and you're like, no, let's do something that I would say because I want to play as myself. So it's really, really hard to pick something in the middle. Really, really hard. Now, the game, kind of helps you a little bit because as you're passing these passive checks and your psyche's talking to you, it's telling you, you should say this. And, if you have been paying attention to your characters in your head, you can kind of tell where they lead you depending on who's talking. So if authority is talking, then you know that you're being slightly more on the fascist side or whatever. Not that, again, this is super absurd. Not that you are fascist. Don't think that. But it's kind of like in that direction. And so you're like, okay, if they are talking to me and they tell me to say one thing, I'll do that. But it's just really hard. Like at the end of the day, you're still kind of quote unquote talking to a person. And so you want to have a person conversation. I think if I played this a second time, which, man, this game can be replayed a lot. But we'll talk about that in a second. I think you can replay this a lot, but I think the obviously the story won't be as impactful. I think I would probably try to really, really play as a crazy person. Try to like get Kim to hate me, try to recruit Kuno, and try to like just see how far that spectrum will stretch the game. I think that would be really fun to pursue. What about you?
Yeah, when I when I read Joe's question, I was just the Twitch chat emote caught. I was like, caught. Yep, that's me. Because like I'm totally like that, and in his question, I'm on the like enhanced version of myself, I guess you could say, because like I like to think I'm an analytical person. Like I do a lot of research and stuff like that. So yeah, playing the game, I was like, obviously I'm gonna try to be myself, because it's so hard to separate. Like I want to play as myself. Like I want to see kind of myself in these scenarios, I guess you could say. And there's like someone like you might play this and you want to be this like, crazy physical, like human specimen, like strength, all this stuff. And that's hilarious. Right. But like for me, when I'm playing these games, I want to see myself in them, like somehow, like at least somehow. So yeah, I was totally just like, like I said, leaning into the intellect and the visual calculus. I definitely, on a second playthrough, I would definitely, now that I have done that and played as myself and like gotten, a satisfying ending to the story, I think, like you said, I would just explore more of those like fringe options, because like every now and then a dialogue option comes up that's just like literally insane. And I see that, I'm like, I'm not gonna say that. But like I kind of want to know like what would happen if I just like start talking about the impending apocalypse in the middle of this random conversation. Like what's gonna happen? So yeah, I would definitely try to do some more of that for sure.
How do you feel about replaying the game? Like do you think that you will replay the game, and if you do you think you'll enjoy it?
I don't think I will, but I don't really replay games in general. Like I think it would be a scenario for me where like 5 years from now I would come back to it. Like I'm not really a New Game Plus guy or like a replay kind of guy. I think this is the perfect kind of game to replay, just because there's so many different ways to go about it. But I'm not gonna be doing it like anytime soon, probably.
Yeah. I think that in one playthrough you can see a lot of this, everything in terms of story. I think if you want to pursue every side quest, you can mostly do all of them in one playthrough. So besides like interacting with people in a different way based on like the stats that you pick, then that is what will drive your second playthrough. But to me, because the story has been done, because I figured out the case and I completed it from A to Z, I just feel like I wouldn't replay the game. I already struggled with how much reading there was. And it's not about because of the reading. It's just because I was sometimes bored. I was sometimes you would talk to someone and they wanted to talk about so much crap. And I literally was skipping dialogue. I'm like, I don't care. Actually, sometimes my character had that dialogue option just to say, I don't care what you're saying right now. And then it would proceed to the next thing. And I clicked it a bunch because I was like, I genuinely couldn't be bothered, Or like, that's for hilarious. Me, and I know, I think you were going to ask me this, but the end of the game, the deserter, and we'll talk about it more, but the deserter talks so much. Bro, he talked for 30 minutes. And like, I was zoning out, to be honest. I was just zoning out and letting the VA just like talk. So yeah, I don't know. I probably wouldn't do a second playthrough. Like maybe it's one of those things where like ideally maybe I would, but like realistically I probably won't. But Max asks from the Discord as well, to piggyback onto Joe's question, can games even find a way to stop players from self-inserting, anti-self-inserting? An easy answer might be, why do they need to? But I would argue in games like this, it's important to consider player input and when you know players will either be evil or good with very little gray. It kind of forces the hand of the game makers to explore that gray less.
Yeah, I think it's a really smart question. And I feel like this game does that in some ways
Yeah.
because, like, I as a person, I wouldn't like identify myself as like super far to one side of one spectrum or to the other. Make of that what you will, but like I lean more on one than the other, but I'm not like an extremist kind of person really. But in the game, if you try to play that more like kind of central role where like you get into these really political conversations and people directly ask you what is your opinion on this, and you can say, you can be like a fascist, you can be a ultra liberal, or you can be anything basically. But you can also just kind of like Kim does, you can say like, I'm staying out of it, I don't really want to explore that any further. And I would pick that a few times just because like I don't really identify with either of those extremes, so I would do that. But the game like kind of makes fun of you for that, and like your inner thoughts start to kind of chime in and be like, oh, Mister like doesn't have an opinion, just like wants to go through life without making any choices. And I'm like, well, what am I supposed to do? Like I don't know. So that is kind of one way that this game specifically kind of forces that about you. Yeah, I mean, in terms of those like kind of moral decisions of like good and evil and stuff, I feel like both need to be built out sufficiently, because like you can have all the good options, but the moment you turn evil, then like everything's just over. Whereas
Yeah.
like if you give the player agency to meaningfully explore both of those options, then I think it adds a lot to the experience. And I think this game did that in more ways than not.
Yeah, I definitely try to pick a side. So I would, whenever you had to make a political opinion, I went up, like, not absurd, but like I kind of did go absurd, because in this world, I went with the communards, right? Was like how they described them. And so every option that I would just pick that one, because I was like, okay, it's in line with like my character, because that's like a decision that I made that I was going to play this way. But some other dialogue options were not as easy to figure out which one I should pick, depending on what path I want to go to. To Max's question, it can be sometimes hard to like insert the personality that you want to the character, for the character that you're playing as. So one idea that I had when I read this question was kind of like on a new game plus situation, because you have played this game, because you kind of know how it works, that you have like all of these, 7 or 8 different like maybe political like opinions that you can have. If you can choose, it doesn't have to be political. It can be like of psyche too, of like, how are you going to be crazy, not crazy, like mean, rude, polite, or whatever. If you can, I think it would be too overwhelming to do this from the get-go, but on a new game plus, if you can choose like, hey, I want to be an ultra liberal, and I want to be like, semi intellectual, not a lot of physical, whatever, like all of these points. And then maybe like there's an accessibility option where you play, and whatever you choose maybe has like a green flag or like a red flag. Maybe that would be a little too easy and like not as fun, but some way that the game kind of nudges you, because you made a decision on how you want to play, like, hey, you should go here to
Right.
to like, go down that path. Now, how fun would that be? I don't know, Max. Like, I don't know if people would actually even want to have that. It's a little fun to figure out by yourself. But then, yeah, it kind of, like you said, I think, yeah, it makes the game explore the gray area less, because it forces you to make a decision either one way or the other. So, but that's a really good question. I think it's kind of hard, yeah. But I think there's ways to make it so that the players really understand and know all the decisions that they're making, and hopefully they do become fleshed out in the end.
Yeah, agreed. Do you have any You want me? Okay, so
Bro, it was 1-1. You asked one, I asked one. It's your turn, brother.
Okay, fair. Okay, chill, bro.
Hey.
um, so, um, so I'm curious to know, like, I feel like there is so much freedom in this game. Like, you can go anywhere, you can do anything, talk to whoever you want. However, I think once you get to a certain point, and I think that's pretty definitively finding Ruby underneath the boardwalk, right? Once you get to that point, the game is basically on rails past that. Like, you are pretty much railroaded to the end of the game from that point on, with like not like maybe some different ways to experience it. You know, like you said, my character was able to like figure out the trajectory of the shot kind of before I found Clausia's thing, whereas you needed that bit of information. But the outcome and, you know, the path of that is very set in stone. So I just kind of wanted to know, like, how you felt about that overall kind of sequence of the end game, given how radically I feel like it shifts from, like, ultra freedom to, like, you know, kind of railroady.
I mean, I felt like the meeting Ruby into the tribunal was like the climax of the experience for me. I was having so much fun.
Yes,
obviously everything
definitely.
is kind of like, everything is happening. It's super intense. You feel the tense in the air, obviously the tension in the air. People are dying, you know, all of these things are happening. I loved that portion. I was like, hell yeah, I'm in endgame. Let's go, try to finish it. And then you wake up, you know, a couple of days later, you've been shot, and then you have like another 2 hours of gameplay to actually finish the game. And like, yes, the deserter was interesting, but it wasn't, I don't want to say anticlimactic because I think that's slightly derivative on like how cool like the whole story is, but I don't know. I didn't get the same oomph, and I was just kind of tired of the dialogue at that point. Like, you know, you spent 25 hours doing the first part of the game, or like, you know, all of this before like really the end game, and you've gone through so much, and they give you all this action at the end to kind of like finish the game with, but then there's a little bit more dialogue after that. Well, not a little bit, a lot more dialogue after that. And I think it slows the momentum down. I think it kind of slowed me down a little bit, and I was kind of like, ugh, you know, like, come on, just let's finish the game, you know. So I don't know. I don't want to take points away, but I will a little bit, just with the end. I just think it was, I don't know, the momentum kind of died for me a little bit.
No, it's fair. I think, like you said, like the climax of the game was so strong with the tribunal and everything like that. And I liked the end game, and I didn't really mind, I guess, how on rails it was. It was like kind of a departure from the rest of the game, like we said, but you know, I appreciated the final encounter with, you know, the deserter. Like you, I think I felt like it might have dragged on too long, but it was also like, you know, kind of the swan song of the game.
True.
So I liked, you know, the dialogue for the most part was good. The encounter with the Phasmid was, you know, crazy. I was like, I thought it was fun. Like, I was hoping we would get to find the Phasmid, so that was satisfying to me. And like in terms of the overall conclusion of the narrative, like I think some people might be disappointed that it was just like this random guy that killed it, but I thought it kind of fit the narrative. Like this, you have this world with this like crazy class violence and all this stuff happening, but you know, this murder with all this intrigue behind it is essentially boils down to like a random act of violence. Yeah. But that random act of violence is kind of steeped in all of the kind of political undertones of the world. So I like the ending in that way. And then, you know, the encounter with your partner and the rest of the station, I thought was pretty satisfying. Like I appreciated Kim recognizing that like I did a good job, because I was just playing the whole game to impress Kim. Like I just wanted him to be my friend. So I thought that was good. And when I was able to like be like, hey, we should join forces, I was like, yes, this rocks. So yeah, I mean, I thought overall, like I was like you at that point in the game, I was like, I just kind of wanted, like I let's put a bow on this. I wasn't like end the game. I was like, let's let's wrap this up.
The deserter just talked too much. Maybe that's it. Maybe like simplified version of like
it kind of killed the momentum.
He's just, oh my god, yapping, just like us, dude. Just full on yappers.
Just like us.
Is there something you wanted to do in game that you weren't able to do? Like an activity or a task, either because it didn't exist or because you failed and you just couldn't pursue a certain thing?
I mean, the most insane part of the game to me was like the lore building around the Pale and stuff like that. Like I wanted to explore that a lot more, and I didn't realize that there is a way to do that. You can essentially get an alternate ending to the game where you recruit the programmer and you recruit, some of the ravers, and you build this like massive antenna out of the horse statue that's like central to the town. So like there's a statue of a horse with like, an old king of Revachol on it. And Harry can like climb the horse and use it as an antenna to contact a coalition warship that's just like circling, the entire country basically. And you can contact it and be like, hey, I found this, entropic anomaly basically. I think it's like a point of origin for the Pale. Like the coalition needs to know about this. There's also like, something's about to get set off in Martinez. So we need to, like, you guys need to come fix this basically. And the coalition will basically be like, we need more information about this. And they'll send down like a helicopter that Harry can get on and go to talk to the coalition and tell them what he found out about the Pale. And that's the end of the game. That's an ending of the game. Like Harry just disappears. He's never seen again. But he like kind of, explores more along that path. So I like the whole concept behind the Pale and everything I found so interesting. So I wanted to explore that a little more. I guess I just wasn't able to, and like I wouldn't want that to be the ending to my game, so I probably wouldn't have done it anyway. But yeah, I would definitely go down and kind of finish out that quest line if I were to do it again.
That's a great answer. Also, I didn't know that that's kind of an incredible ending that you can have.
It's crazy.
I know that there's like about 10 different endings, and they're, all kind of not silly, but, interesting, kind of like what happened to me in front of the Hardy Boys. For me, I wanted to hang out with my Scouse boy Kuno more. I didn't want to desert Kim, but if I had been able to recruit Kuno and like have him also hanging around with me and Kim would have been pretty good. Maybe find out a little bit more about Kuones, which I feel like I couldn't, like I did Kuno's quest line and like the dad and everything and all that, but kind of wanted to do a little bit more. I also, the guy that's smoking that lets you into the apartment building, I kind of wanted to explore that a little bit more and see where that kind of quest would go. I didn't really get a lot of option, so maybe I either missed something or because I went into his apartment. I went into his apartment. I met his friend, quote unquote, or whatever, and then he was in the whirling in rags, and then I talked to him a little bit there. Told him that I met his friend. Everyone, Kim would like snicker at me and like make fun of me a little bit because I didn't, like obviously they're not friends. They're something else, but like Harry just doesn't really understand, and yeah, I don't know. Maybe that was just like a joke again of like how oblivious Harry is to the world because of his super crazy amnesia. But yeah, I just thought we could do more there. Then my last question, Ben, is I know that you played this game on the Nintendo Switch, and I played it on my computer. For a point and click game where I felt like I was clicking and pointing a lot the whole time, how was playing this game on the Switch?
Yeah, no, good question. So in terms of the controls, it was pretty good. Like you move the character with the thumbstick. Like it's instead of point and click, it's just like regular moving around. Okay. But the way you interact with, I think you just run by default. Okay. So I was just running everywhere. There was actually a point where I was talking to Kim and he was like, man, you like run everywhere. Like I'm tired. Like what's going on? I was like, I'm just going, bro. Like, I don't know. But, and then in terms of like interacting with, the different pop-ups, like the orbs in the environment you have to investigate, and the thought prompts, like you use the right thumbstick to like kind of scroll between them almost. You use it to like kind of pick out different parts of the environment that you then investigate.
Okay.
So in terms of the controls, it was pretty good. Like the controls worked pretty well. In terms of the performance, it was very bad.
Oof.
So I can't fault it too much. Like the Switch is old hardware at this point. And the reason I
but the
played
game
it
came
on
out
the
in like
Switch,
2020, 2019, 2021.
yeah, but I mean the Switch was yeah, but I don't know. Like maybe it's just not very well optimized.
Maybe.
But so the reason, like I would have played it on PC too, but the reason I played it on the Switch was because I was doing a lot of travel around the holidays, and I just wanted to be able to. And I don't have a Steam Deck, so I just wanted to be able to play it while I was traveling.
Yeah.
But man, it was bad. Like frame rate was really bad. The menus were super slow to load. The game crashed constantly. Like
Oof.
it got to like there were points where I lost like, pretty big chunks of gameplay because of crashes, and it got to the point where I was saving like literally every 5 minutes. Like before I
Damn.
started any line of dialogue, I was saving the game because like I just don't know what's gonna happen.
Yeah, I would say the
So that
autosave
sucked.
doesn't
That
trigger that much.
Yeah, yeah. You definitely need those quick saves. So
Yeah.
that sucked. That killed my enjoyment of the game like a little bit, but for the most part didn't impact me too much. But yeah. In terms of controls, they did it pretty well in terms of like putting a point and click game on a handheld. But yeah, in terms of like the actual game performance, not good.
Yeah.
Not good.
I totally fine on the PC. I didn't even play this game on the Steam Deck because after like I played it once or twice on the PC and I was pointing and clicking. I was like, how can I could play this game with one hand, like usually my cat always sits on my lap, like when I'm playing games. And so I was like petting my cat with one hand, playing the game with literally all you need is your mouse and you can play the game. So yeah, I was like, I don't know how I can do that with the Steam Deck. The like trackpads, they're fine, they're not amazing, and I was like, I'll just play on my PC. But I just wanted to know how the Switch was. I have like two questions. They're kind of more simple questions. You have to give me your favorite character that is not Kim, because that's everyone's answer. So you have to give me your favorite character that is not Kim, and you have to give me your favorite like quest or quest line.
Man, my favorite quest is easy. I'll say the church one, just because it introduces you to so much about the lore. My favorite character is hard. I think my favorite character besides Kim, obviously, Kim, the best boy. But my favorite character to talk to was Everard, just because he was so entertaining. Like his voice acting, again, like I said, was so good. His dialogue was so funny and so well written. But my favorite character to interact with was probably Joyce, just because she had like so much context and so much to tell you about the world you were in. And there is so much like world building in this game.
Yeah.
Like the amount of world building is insane.
Yeah.
Like it is so overwhelming. So I enjoyed talking to her, and just like she is basically a resource to tell you about the world, because the game is basically like she's rich, so she knows everything. And so you like talk to her a lot. So yeah, it's kind of funny. Like my two favorite characters to interact with were kind of on different sides of the scale.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like them both a lot.
I love Kuno. It's just so funny. Like he's a terrible kid. But obviously he's just a product of his environment. But yeah, he's just so funny. I like Lena a lot. I thought she was so sweet, and Mañana. And then in terms of quest lines, I think the church quest is just so cool. That whole thing is really good. Funny ones like finding one of the drunk guys like jackets, and it's covered in like poop basically, and then you like have to ask the washerwoman to wash it for you, and then you bring him the jacket and he's like, that's not my jacket, and it's like, bro, this is clearly your jacket. And he's like, no bro, you think I would wear something like that? I'm like the elite of the world. And it's like, bro, you're a drunk, like I don't know. Like this is your jacket, that like stuff, little quests like that I thought were really fun. And then there was one, it's not really a quest, but you can play a board game with Kim, and the board game was really fun. Did you play the board game?
I didn't get that. I did pinball. I got the pinball one.
Oh, but
I didn't play a board game.
I played pinball, but then I didn't pass the check to like beat the game or whatever.
I did.
Oh my
I
god!
won the game.
Oh my god!
I won pinball. I'm the ultimate pinball player.
He's the ultimate pinball player. Ben is so good. He always wins at games. He's like, every time I text him on Discord, I'm like, "Are you winning, son?" And he's like, "Yes, bro, I'm winning."
Yes, I am winning. No.
You can
what
play.
What was the board game?
Yeah, you can play a board game, and it's kind of like a resource management kind of esque board game. Maybe like not really like a Catan, but more like a city builder board game. And but you don't actually play the game, if that makes sense. Like the narrator or like your, some narration is happening, and because I'm trying to think if it's a character in your head, but I don't think it was. And it tells you what's going on in the game, and then it gives you options of what you can do. And then it tells you what Kim is doing, and Kim loves the game. He was like super into the board game, and he wanted to absolutely crush you, and he absolutely crushed me. Like I got like no points, and he got like so many points. So that thing was good. But I think that does it for questions. So Ben, why don't you tell me your final thoughts on Disco Elysium?
Yeah, man. I mean, my thoughts about this game, like the game itself, are complex, right? Like, it is such a good concept of a game. The world building, like we've said, is unbelievably rich. Like, you can write a whole book about it, which they did, as we know. And the dialogue, so well written. The voice acting, at least in the final cut, asterisk, is so good. The story itself is so good. This game for me is like a solid A. Like it's so close to an A+. It's so close. But I think it's a solid A for me. And, maybe dinged a little bit by my own performance issues, which, like, I don't, super blame them for, but at the same time, like, probably could have been done a little better. So, yeah, solid A, awesome game. Strong start to the year for me. Like, we're going to have to do our year-end rankings like we did last year. It's going to be tough to top.
Ooh, wow, I love the game. I was trying to figure out what my thoughts were and I was talking to like some coworkers, some people on the Discord too about it. I think it's one of those things, and this is complex, but sometimes while playing the game, I was miserable because I didn't care about reading every single piece of dialogue. Genuinely, yeah. and then and people, if you want to make fun of me for it. I when I play video games, I like to play video games that are like strategy games, like fighting games, like anything that is like action, and there's no action in this game. It's all conversation, and you just need to process information, pick dialogue options that make sense based on your character, if you want to play like RPG style or like the situation that's going on. And sometimes I just didn't really care, and I was just clicking whatever until I would especially if it was a character that didn't really matter to the story, I was like, whatever, I don't care. But there were some other points in the game that absolutely captivated me, and I would play, and I liked this maybe character in particular or this quest line in particular, and then I would look over, and I've been playing for 2 hours, So that's why it's complex. I think I'm just not a person that plays point and click adventure games or like these type of games in general. But because the game could captivate me so much, and because overall I really, really loved the package, like Disco Elysium as a whole is like so solid, and it's such a incredible experience, even though I didn't like some parts of it because I was bored. I think this is a good game. Like it has to be. Like you have to be objective sometimes when you like, rate or review these kinds of games like we're doing now. You can't just say the same shit, because you didn't.
That's fair.
No,
like
but
you can recognize that this game is like an artistic achievement.
Exactly.
It is.
And
like
that's what I was going to say.
But at the same time, it's not like, different strokes for different folks, right?
Yeah, like would I play,
like
if someone tells me, hey, if you like Disco Elysium, you should play this other point and click game. Like, I don't know if I would, because Disco Elysium, for me, is the peak of these types of games. And that's it. That's all I want to experience, I guess. Like, it didn't make me want to play more point and click adventure games. It just made me be
No,
like,
it's
hey,
fair.
Disco Elysium is the pinnacle, and I'm so glad that I was able to play it. So with that, I was going to say A minus, but I think A is deserved. So we should stamp it. A.
Bang, stamp
Disco
it.
Elysium, our book report is an A.
Love it.
Wow, we can breathe
Man.
now, Ben.
What an awesome game. What an awesome way to start off 2025. I think we picked a banger of a game to do it. But now we need a new game. It's a new month. It is February. JP, what is our next game of the month?
The February 2025 game of the month is Arco. Or Arco. Arco. A-R-C-O.
I say Arco.
Arco.
You say...
Arco.
There we go.
This game was actually a suggestion from the Discord, from Yax, at Yax on the Discord. And he has been dying to play this game. And he was like, please pick this game for Video Game Book Club so that we can all play it together. I read what the game is about. And it is a Mesoamerican adventure. And if you've heard a little bit of an accent every time I speak, it's because I actually am Mesoamerican. I'm from El Salvador, which is like the lowest like end portion of Mesoamerica. And that captivated me. I was like, I need to play this game. Like, I need to see my culture represented. I'm so excited to like, I don't even know if I've played a game that like, the setting is like, parts of Central America, obviously, and into Mexico. And so I was just super, super excited. The art style looks really cool. It's like a RPG, like turn-based / real-time like strategy game. So I'm very, very pumped to play it. I thank Yax for the recommendation, and I'm so excited to play Arco. February 2025 Video Game Book Club. I think we're starting with a bang, Ben.
Let's go.
Have you read anything about the game? Have you seen clips? Have you played it?
No, I'm gonna start playing it today after we get off.
Ooh,
but
okay.
Like you said, I checked out the Steam page, was immediately captivated by the art style and some of the gameplay I saw. So super pumped.
Arco means bow. And if you see the main character is holding a bow and arrow, arco y flecha is bow and arrow. So I think that's why the game comes from that. So super excited. And Ben, if people want to play this game with us, how can they do that?
I mean, well, first of all, you got to join the club, right? Got to join the club in the Discord. Check out, the link in our bio. All of our bios on YouTube, Spotify, wherever you're listening to this. Hit the link in the bio, join the Discord. We love interacting with you guys and playing stuff along. That's what kind of makes this whole thing tick, is that kind of community interaction. So we love it. And tell other people as well. Like, we gotta get other people joining the club. We gotta grow this thing, right? So, if maybe you like bow hunting in the real world, tell your bow and arrow instructor to join the club as well. Like, he might really like rock with Arco. Like, he might be down with it. So you don't know. Tell your dance teacher, your tennis partner, if you play tennis, like some doubles. Tell your tennis partner, maybe even your opponents. Why not? Like, they can join the club too.
After you beat them.
After you beat them. So tell everyone, man. You got to tell everyone to join the club.
That is going to do it for us on this episode of Video Game Book Club. Thank you so much for listening, and please make sure to join the club and be with us at the end of February when we're going to release the episode
and subscribe.
When we're going to release the episode of Arco. Like and subscribe and join the club on the Discord so that you can keep enjoying our content and so that you can mingle with us. Thank you very much for listening. Bye.
Bye.